Chapter 2380. Intense Conflict 7. Could it be that they've been tricked by someone? Stop for now! Number 061 yelled loudly. It's a ceasefire, Chu Yang shouted in a clear voice. Following the call for a ceasefire from both team captains, all the people caught up in the irresolvable fight came to a stop despite still being unbearably angry. Number 061 ran swiftly over to that feeble-breathed number 064 and shouted out a question. Did you take their crystal fragment? Number 064 face filled with confusion. Then he shook his head. Liar! You're clearly the person who stole my crystal fragment. Xiao Luo got so angry that she was practically stomping. The cut my sword made in your right sleeve shows clearly that it was you. The captain of the Thorn team unconsciously reached toward number 064's arm. There was indeed the mark of a sword having slashed across 064's shoulder. Indeed, number 061's eyes narrowed as he reached into number 064's hidden chest pocket. That thin, ice-cold fragment was lying there quietly. For a split second, there was a complicated expression in number 061's eyes. Upon seeing that, the tension in Chu Yang's gaze eased a little. He said calmly, Number 061, do you remember our agreement to have an amicable cooperation? What amicable cooperation? Number 064's looked at his captain bewilderedly. Number 061 suddenly regained his senses at this moment. How could he have forgotten about that? Number 064 hadn't actually been present when they made the agreement, so he had no idea that his own team had done such a thing. In other words, if number 064 had ambushed and robbed Chu Yang's team of their crystal fragment, that would have been due to the hostile relationship between the Thorn Guild and Purgatory City. This meant that it wasn't inherently wrong. Number 061? Chu Yang looked at number 061 nonchalantly, shifting his gaze to the latter's hand. Number 061 slowly withdrew his hand from number 064's chest pocket and unfolded his palm. There was nothing on it. There was a slight sense of shock in Chu Yang's expression. Number 061 sneered. There's no crystal fragment. In other words, you were slandering my team member? And you even tried to kill him? The thing number 061 wanted to confirm was whether Su Luo had made a fool out of him. This was because he, like Chu Yang, suspected that there was a third party interfering and pulling the strings from behind the scenes. However, number 061 had just found verification on number 064's body that he was the one, not Su Luo in disguise, who had attacked and stolen from Xiao Luo. For number 061, knowing this was enough. Chu Yang and the others had initially been waiting for the captain of the Thorn team to hand over the crystal fragment, but now it appeared that he wasn't going to do so. Number 061 knew that although his side would win this intense conflict, Chu Yang's team would inflict serious damage on them. In that case, the gains truly wouldn't make up for the losses his team would suffer for this mission. You have two choices now. Number 061 looked at Chu Yang coldly. Die in battle, or will you get lost? The expressions of everyone on Chu Yang's side turned sour. Why were they being accused and berated like this? When had they ever suffered such humiliation? At this moment, all of their gazes focused on Chu Yang. Each line of sight was like a sword piercing through him. Chu Yang hesitated and then hesitated some more. His arm hung tensely by the side of his body as he clenched his fist tight. The protruding cyan veins on his hand were enough to show his inner torment. Big brother! Xiao Luo tugged at Chu Yang and gazed at him pleadingly. My crystal fragment. The crystal fragment that had been so difficult for them to find. Big brother, we can't go. My crystal fragment. Xiao Luo pleaded persistently. The crystal fragment had been stolen from my hand. I couldn't simply leave like this. I truly couldn't. Chapter 2381. By chance 1. However, Chu Yang gently pushed Xiao Luo away. He took in a deep breath and yelled loudly, Let's go. After that, Chu Yang took the lead for their exit. Senior Sister Yu and the others looked at each other in dismay before ultimately shaking their heads and leaving too. Actually, their boss decision was right. Since both sides would suffer, what was the point of pointlessly sacrificing their lives? Nevertheless, they certainly felt sullen about it. Yet at this moment, Su Luo was the most depressed among them. She had gone through so much effort to get them to kill each other, but now, they were just going to leave like that? Wasn't this merely a waste of all her efforts, especially when she was so close to getting what she wanted? Right when Su Luo was feeling vexed, the captain of the Thorn team said 2 words, "Hang on." Chu Yang turned around resentfully. "You," 061 said coldly while pointing at Xiao Luo. "Come over here." Even ordinary people would get angry upon facing that arrogant and bossy manner, let alone Xiao Luo, who was a pampered young lady that had never experienced any hardships before. Xiao Luo looked at her older brother, sullenly, without taking a single step. Chu Yang stepped in front of Xiao Luo defensively and raised his eyes towards 061. "What are you trying to do? If you heal him, our previous grudge will be written off." 061 pointed at the barely breathing 064, who was lying on the ground. After all, in the aspect of medical treatments, the Thorn had always been inferior to Purgatory City. Moreover, Xiao Luo was a light mage, so she had earned healing techniques long ago. While Chu Yang was still considering the offer, Xiao Luo complacently took over and smirked. "You think I'll heal him just because you tell me to? Who the heck are you to me?" Initially, she was already resentful toward the Thorn team, but now 061 was rudely pointing at her and ordering her to heal 064. She felt so indignant about it. 061 didn't bother with her and stared straight at Chu Yang while saying his words slowly one by one. "You are the ones who injured him. If anything happens to him, we're fighting to the death today." After throwing out this line, 061's ice-cold gaze swept over the faces of Chu Yang, Xiao Luo, Senior Sister Yu, and Lung Qi one by one, engraving their features in his mind. The meaning of his words was very clear. If they couldn't save 064, they would be fighting to the end. If this were on a normal day, there wouldn't be much to it. However, they were both doing a mission at the moment. If they were to fight it out now and die in mutual destruction, that would just be a total joke. "Do you have the confidence that you can heal him?" Chu Yang looked at Xiao Luo. If Xiao Luo didn't have the confidence to do so, they were better off forgetting about it. If she treated 064 badly and killed him instead, 061 would blame it on them, and that would just cause them a whole lot of trouble. The outer corners of Xiao Luo's eyes raised up complacently in a contemptuous sneer. "They're just some external wounds. My healing light has already reached the point of perfection. How could I not be able to heal such superficial wounds?" Seeing Xiao Luo speak with complete confidence, 061 finally let out a sigh of relief, and his tone got nicer. "As long as you heal him, you can leave. Additionally, the business agreement we made previously will still stand." Xiao Luo was arrogant, but she knew this was a critical situation. So under the pressure of the earnest hopes and expectations of her teammates, she walked over to 64 anyway in spite of her bad mood. The atmosphere became unprecedentedly harmonious at this time. However, that wasn't the case for Su Luo, who was hiding behind a wall. Her mood wasn't very good at all. She'd rushed about busily, calculating this and that, before she finally managed to get the two teams into an intense conflict where they fought like irreconcilable adversaries. Yet with just a brief conversation, they were now in a ceasefire and reconciling, as well as continuing to keep their agreement in effect. What the heck was this? These thoughts meant that Su Luo didn't approve of this situation. And if Su Luo didn't approve of it, that meant there would be very grave consequences. This was because she still had many hidden cards in her hand. A crafty sneer like that of a fox flashed past her eyes, and her right hand spread open. A white jade bottle the size of a little finger appeared on her palm at this moment. Chapter 2382. By chance, too. Su Luo didn't have the time to consider it further, so she just went ahead and opened the white jade porcelain bottle. With her head tilted back, she downed the brown liquid from the bottle in one shot. This bottle contained the concealment potion, which would only be effective for 15 minutes. After drinking it, Su Luo very quickly realized her body had become transparent. Under the illumination of the moonlight, she initially had a very long shadow stretching out behind her, But now, this shadow had completely disappeared. Very good. Su Luo's lips spread into a smile. She took a deep breath and then quietly approached 064. How could Su Luo possibly let Xiao Luo save 064? And how could she possibly let the two teams reconcile? At this time, Xiao Luo was indifferently using healing light to heal 064's injuries. It had to be said that Xiao Luo still had a child's temperament. She was still feeling angry even while healing 064. So, even though she could definitely use a simple method to heal him, she deliberately chose a method that would cause him unbearable pain. 064 was in so much pain that his complexion became bloodlessly pale and he was squirming about on the ground. 061 constantly had his gaze on Xiao Luo. He wanted to speak up several times, but ultimately restrained himself. Xiao Luo was feeling extremely complacent. Weren't you all arrogant and bossy to me just before? If you have what it takes, come on, come and scold me now. See if I won't cause him to die from pain. When she recalled how the person before her, 064, had stolen her crystal fragment, a sinister expression flashed past her eyes briefly. 061 was looking at her at this very moment. This is a great opportunity. Su Luo cheered inwardly. Right then, Su Luo, who had consumed the concealment potion, was already near 064. It was just that Xiao Luo was in front of 064, while Su Luo was behind him. Su Luo had gotten such a good opportunity. If she didn't use it, she wouldn't be Su Luo. The corners of her lips lifted to form a crafty grin. Then she unleashed a healing technique that was also of the light attribute onto 064. However, even though both Xiao Luo and Su Luo were both using healing techniques, Su Luo's technique brought about unstoppable death. Her dot of light invaded 064's body and wantonly destroyed his internal organs. Su Luo was currently invisible, so no one could see her. Additionally, because the technique she used was also of the light attribute, no one noticed her. Consequently, Su Luo used the light attribute to wreak havoc in 064's body. Moreover, as Xiao Luo was filled with anger and a desire for revenge, she had already been oppressing 064 with unbearable pain. So no one even suspected anything was amiss when Su Luo made her move. All of that made it easier for Su Luo to put her plan into motion. As the concealment potion was only effective for 15 minutes, Su Luo did it in the shortest time possible and soon achieved the results she wanted. On the ground, 064 was in so much pain that he was rolling from side to side before ultimately spitting out a mouthful of blood. Blood sprayed out wildly like a fountain. Most of it splashed onto Xiao Luo, covering her clean, pure white skirt with blood splatter that looked like plum blossoms in full bloom. Xiao Luo was startled into a daze. Then she flew into a rage in the next second. What are you doing? She unconsciously used searing light. How terribly weak was 064 currently? He still had what appeared to be an intact body from the outside, but his insides had long since already been destroyed by Su Luo until there was practically nothing left. So when Xiao Luo attacked him, he was instantly burned to pitch-black coal. 064 died just like that. Xiao Luo was astonished. Chu Yang was astonished. A person who was even more astonished was the captain of the Thorn team. At this moment, 061 first stared dazedly at 064. Then his eyes opened wide till they were perfectly round, and he glared unwaveringly at his pitch-black subordinate who looked just like a strip of coal. Finally, he shifted his incredulous gaze inch by inch on a Xiao Luo. Chapter 2383, By Chance 3. Facing the murderous gaze of the Thorn Captain, Xiao Luo was so scared that she suddenly shivered from the depths of her heart. She subconsciously ran to hide behind Chu Yang, shouting loudly in terror, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me who killed him. It really wasn't me." But who would believe her? Everyone had watched Xiao Luo perform the treatment with their very own eyes. Everyone was a witness. They could all prove that this person had indeed been killed by Xiao Luo. Big brother, you have to believe me. That black-clothed man really wasn't killed by me. Xiao Luo was so nervous that she was trembling all over. The Thorn Captain's pair of eyes was like an ice shard stabbing at her, stabbing to the extent where she found it hard to sit at ease and was filled with worry. All around there was silence. Nobody made a sound. Chu Yang quietly looked at Xiao Luo and opened his mouth with difficulty. His voice was hoarse as he spoke distinctly. Why? Xiao Luo had clearly said it would be easy to treat 064, so why did he die from the treatment in the end? Why was it that everyone was ultimately forced to make unnecessary sacrifices, even when a truce was clearly possible? Why did it have to be so unreasonable, so unjustifiable? Xiao Luo was shocked and then became at a loss. Brother, right at that moment, the Thorn Captain attacked without hesitation. His long arm reached out and grabbed hold of Xiao Luo's slender snow-white neck, and Xiao Luo's tongue extended out greatly as she was being strangled. In an instant, the face that had originally been white turned into a vivid purple, taking on a very frightening appearance. The Thorn Captain even gripped Xiao Luo's shoulders and lifted her up. Xiao Luo's mouth let out a choked voice, unable to get a single word out. Didn't you say it was easily curable? Didn't you say it was as easy as the flip of a hand? How come the person has been cured to death? The Thorn Captain's pair of eyes were livid, and his expression hidden under the black scarf was twisted. He was so angry that he was about to explode. You deliberately intended to kill him, didn't you? The Thorn Captain burst out. Xiao Luo was already dizzy from being strangled. In addition to that, she suddenly felt her mouth and nose were being obstructed and felt as if the shadow of death was looming over her body. Chu Yang finally reacted. He quickly stepped up and grabbed the Thorn Captain's shoulder. Let go of her. Chu Yang had a very powerful grip, but the Thorn Captain's shoulder was as solid as a rock. The two people were at a standstill. Xiao Luo kept kicking her legs helplessly as if she were drowning. The moment Chu Yang saw that the situation was not favorable, he couldn't spend any more time thinking about what to do. He immediately covered the back of the Thorn Captain's hand with his own large hand. It was because he saw the Thorn Captain was twisting his fingers. With the twist of his fingers, Xiao Luo's neck would be broken. He only had this one little sister. How could he bear to let her die? The Thorn Captain threw Xiao Luo aside heavily. Following this, he began to fight hard against Chu Yang. After a mere moment, the two teams that had originally been calm now unexpectedly began to fight again irreconcilably, enveloped in the flames of battle. Their battle was only just beginning, but Su Luo had already long since retreated over and over and over again. She retreated far away because the time limit of the invisibility potion on her body had already passed. If she still didn't leave, she would be caught immediately. Due to the fight, Su Luo didn't intend to stay where she was. In fact, while she was sabotaging the body of the black-clothed 064 earlier, she had already gotten hold of the crystal fragment from his arms. Having obtained the crystal fragment, Su Luo decided on the spot. I'll return to the spirit transformation pond. There was only one piece, but as the saying went, even a mosquito, though tiny, still provides nourishment. Su Luo hastily held the seventh crystal fragment and ran to the spirit transformation pond. Chapter 2384. By chance 4. Su Luo walked slowly into the spirit transformation pond. She smoothly and steadily placed the dreamily gorgeous crystal fragment into the spirit transformation pond. Very quickly, a hazy holy light appeared above the spirit transformation pond. Su Luo sat with her legs crossed, and her body began to sink to the bottom of the spirit transformation pond. She closed her eyes tightly, stopped her breathing, and used her body's instincts to absorb the holy energy from the spirit transformation pond. As there was only one crystal fragment, Su Luo absorbed it very slowly, savoring it with each bite. Previously, the energy of 6 crystal fragments allowed for Su Luo's light attribute to advance to the 3rd level of searing light, so it was now right at its peak. As soon as Su Luo absorbed the 7th crystal fragment, she immediately broke through the barrier and reached the next level, mirror cloning. A completely identical copy of Su Luo appeared behind her. This copy was exactly the same as her original self, be it how she was dressed or her strength. At this time, this clone was in an identical posture to Su Luo. They were both sitting cross-legged and had their fingers facing upward in a pinching pose while resting on their knees. Soon after, a second clone appeared behind Su Luo. That previous clone had appeared on Su Luo's left, and now this new mirror clone was on Su Luo's right, forming a three-part force with the original Su Luo. Su Luo knew that as long as she had enough power, she would be able to create more clones, reaching a maximum number of as many as 81. However, when Su Luo condensed the second clone, the energy of the crystal fragment was almost exhausted. It was no longer possible to condense a third mirror clone. This made Su Luo somewhat disappointed, as she had been preparing to have many clones appear all at once, preventing the enemy from finding her original self. Imagine if there were a scene with 81 clones, each running wildly in a different direction. Which one would the enemy chase after? Poor Su Luo. She had probably been chased too many times. So after gaining the ability to create clones, her first reaction was to use it to avoid being chased. Just as Su Luo was about to get up and leave the spirit transformation pond to search for the 8th crystal fragment, there was a slight ringing sound nearby. Su Luo's body, which was just about to rise from the pond, was instantly frozen in place as if someone had sealed all her acupuncture points. It was because she heard a familiar sound. There was absolutely no mistake about it. This sound was clearly the voice of the Thorn Captain. Why were they here? Could it be that their battle had already ended? At this time, Su Luo, who had sunk to the bottom of the spirit transformation pond, concentrated on holding her breath. She sat motionlessly in place as she listened to the voices outside. Captain, why stop the battle? Did 064 just die for nothing? The Thorn Captain snorted coldly. How could his death be for nothing? But the other side only had one female die, and it wasn't even that one with the light attribute. Doesn't that mean that 064 died very unjustly? Su Luo heard this conversation and raised her eyebrows slightly. Female, but not the one with the light attribute. Then, meant the one who died was Senior Sister Yu, not Xiao Luo? We exchanged that wretched girl for 3 dark heart fragments. Is that still not enough to shut your mouth? The captain scolded and snorted coldly. Stupid. How am I stupid? This person expressed his disbelief. I called you stupid, yet you're still not convinced? Look, where did these 3 dark heart fragments come from? From the other side as compensation. Chapter 2385. By chance 5. Then isn't this the end? The other side obtained 3 fragments in just a few days, so the odds they will get the dark heart are not low. And this free labor you talk about, you're just going to kill? The person's tone turned into excitement as the realization hit him. So that was Boss's intention. What else would it be? If it wasn't for wanting them to help collect dark heart fragments, why would Boss let them off? So that is to say, once they hand over the dark heart fragments, Boss will just At this moment, Su Luo smiled faintly from the bottom of the spirit transformation pond. It appeared that this Thorn Captain strategy was similar to her own. Su Luo remembered raising self-sacrificing cash, won several times herself. Voices continued to sound out intermittently. Captain, what are we doing here? Yeah, we already cleared the magical beast here and didn't pick up a single dark heart fragment. Captain couldn't be searching for that little girl, right? This is where we encountered that little girl last, but who knows how fast she could have run. Su Luo's heart skipped a beat. She knew that the girl they mentioned was her. Hidden in the spirit transformation pond, Su Luo willed herself to be even more still. These people were experts. If Su Luo was even a little careless, she would be exposed. Fortunately for Su Luo, the night shrouded the spirit transformation pond and her in darkness. In the daytime, the water was clear and transparent. A quick glance at the bottom would reveal Su Luo, no matter how she hid underwater. The Thorn Captain laughed. Idiots! Do you all think that wretched girl is stupid enough to run over here to wait for death? The team members fell silent, obediently receiving their boss reprimands. The Thorn Captain pulled out a crystal fragment from his pocket and stroked it thoughtfully, a sneer flashing across his eyes. The crystal fragment hit the spirit transformation pond with a splash. Captain, you brought us here just to destroy this crystal fragment? Some team members exclaimed in disbelief. What? I can't? The Thorn Captain raised his eyebrows arrogantly. But I don't understand. The crystal fragment could still be traded for a dark heart fragment. How come Boss tossed it into the spirit transformation pond? Idiot! Another of the Thorn Captain's subordinates slapped this person on the head. Obviously, the only one who can cultivate the light attribute in the other team is that evil-hearted girl. Now that she's seriously injured and in desperate need of crystal fragments, do you think Boss will give it to her? Boss would rather throw it away than do such a thing. Even as a cure, the Thorn Captain crossed both hands behind his back, nodding. It was not untrue. That was in fact what he intended. Besides, don't you think that it's a privilege to throw the crystal fragment into the spirit transformation pond and hear this sound? So Boss personally brought us on this trip to throw the crystal fragment into the spirit transformation pond, essentially disposing of it for good. Oh, so it's like that? The captain's idea is brilliant indeed. That's a given. If he wasn't brilliant, would he be our boss? The sound of footsteps faded, and the voices slowly drifted away with the wind. Chapter 2386, By Chance, 6, The Bottom of the Spirit Transformation Pond. Su Luo was completely frozen. She was at a loss for words to use to describe her emotions at this moment. What was this called? Wearing out iron shoes and unable to find them, yet succeeding by one? She just happened to be sitting at the bottom of the spirit transformation pond, sullenly wondering where to go to get crystal fragments. But what just happened? The opposing team had thrown away the crystal fragment like it was garbage right at her feet. Su Luo. Full of shock and disbelief, Su Luo revealed her ecstasy. The Thorn Captain was simply too cute, making light of Long Tu. The Thorn Captain had come here to personally gift her this crystal fragment. Su Luo felt her excellent grade luck start its return. Without time to think further, Su Luo entered a state of cultivation. The energy emanating from the crystal fragment was dissipating with every passing minute and second. Su Luo's eyes closed tightly as she entered an ethereal state. Converging and focusing her mind, she was deeply immersed in cultivation. Mirror cloning. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh at once, two clones appeared in front of Su Luo. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Two more appeared again. Whoosh, 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 two more again. When Su Luo had completely absorbed the energy and opened her eyes, her cells sat all around her. She couldn't contain the smile behind her eyes. The Thorn Captain was truly awesome. This was basically a big gift to her. Su Luo currently actually had 9 clones all at once. Su Luo felt very excited. She looked forward to when she had enough crystal fragments and wondered if she would be able to create 81 mirror clones. By then, I would be truly powerful. Although the clone's strength was not as powerful as herself, it was still very useful. At least, I wouldn't have to be afraid of people chasing me down anymore. Su Luo suddenly thought, what if the first person to try out my 9 clones was that Thorn Captain who had gifted me the crystal fragment? If it really was him, then the resulting outcome could be quite amusing. Su Luo knew that it was not wise to stay too long in the spirit transformation pond, as no one could guarantee the Thorn Captain wouldn't return and kill her. Su Luo didn't waste another second. With a shake of her body, the drenched clothes that had been clinging to her body were instantly dry, as if they had never been in water. They were so light and airy, they seemed as if they could fly. Su Luo teleported, and her silhouette disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye. Where was Su Luo heading? It was not difficult to guess. Earlier, when Su Luo had heard that Xiao Luo was severely injured and dying, she just knew that Chu Yang and the others would be desperately trying to face the 4-winged Ganyu beast. As for Su Luo, she only needed to continue to fish in troubled waters and reap all the benefits. Su Luo pulled out the map, and after seeing the small white specks on it, she pursed her lips and smiled. Her figure vanished once more. It was not difficult to find Chu Yang's team because there was a map to guide her. But finding the crystal fragment truly depended on luck. While Su Luo had been lurking for 3 or 4 days, Chu Yang and the others' luck was so bad that they have yet to find a single crystal fragment. Su Luo sat against the wall with her head hanging in despair. She kind of wanted to give up. Instead of sitting back and freeloading, Su Luo felt it would be more efficient to go and give it a try herself. After all, her luck could sometimes be quite unbelievable. However, a person's luck was often just so elusive. Just when Su Luo was planning to leave and search, a sudden sound of surprise burst out ahead. Chapter 23, 87 by chance, 7. This is a crystal fragment, right? Lung Chi's voice rang out. It turned out that even the always cold and arrogant Lung Chi would also have moments when he showed his emotions. When Chu Yang saw the crystal fragment, he was instantly overjoyed and ordered Lung Chi, "Now, immediately take this crystal fragment, and also Xiao Luo, to the spirit transformation pond." Xiao Luo had almost stopped breathing a few times, and was relying on Chu Yang, who was using his spiritual energy to keep her alive. However, this method could only alleviate her symptoms, but could not resolve the root cause. Other than keeping Xiao Luo with a breath of life, she wasn't really getting any better. In the end, it was all because the Thorn Captain's attack was too harsh. Lung Chi was a little uneasy. "Just me? I'm bringing her alone?" If on the way there, since 061 had let Xiao Luo off earlier, then he definitely won't further make moves to harm her. This is the dignity that only the strong will have, Chu Yang said righteously. Other than that, those magical beasts are no issue for you. And once we collect another crystal fragment, the other crystal fragment is here. A cold, ghastly voice sounded out from behind Chu Yang. Chu Yang turned around and saw it was actually the Thorn Captain. A trace of light flashed across Chu Yang's eyes, and without beating around the bush, asked, "How much do you need?" The Thorn Captain smiled coldly. If it were only a normal person's life, it would naturally be cheap. However, she just so happens to be your sister, and thus the price would be much higher. "Name your price. How much do you want?" Chu Yang's voice was ice cold. The Thorn Captain placed his hands behind his back and raised his chin with arrogance. "I don't want much. Just hand over the intelligence skull, strength arm bones, and agility leg bones, these 5 bones to randomly mess around with." Veins could be seen bulging from Chu Yang's forehead. Could this still be considered randomly messing around? Did he even understand the status and importance of these 5 bones in Purgatory City? Don't mention 5 pieces. Chu Yang wouldn't be able to take out even 1 piece. "You are not able to bring them out, are you?" The Thorn Captain sneered. Chu Yang tacitly agreed and stared motionless at him. "But I can smell the scent of it on a certain person. Remember, the immemorial bones originally belonged to the Thorn." The Thorn Captain's speech was slow, and his gaze had a trace of nostalgia. "Oh," Chu Yang asked curiously. "They're as far away as the ends of the earth, and as near as right in front of your eyes. However, if you're not being cautious of your surroundings, that's a whole other story." When the Thorn Captain walked past Senior Sister Yu, his hands reached out, and the last crystal fragment was now also in his hands. The previous 8 crystal fragments had all been used for the refinement of her light attribute, and the remaining 2 crystal fragments were in the Thorn Captain's hands. And when Su Luo heard what the Thorn Captain said, her heart felt as if it had been pinched by a giant hand, frightening her witless. Su Luo felt things were starting to look a little unfavorable for her. Su Luo didn't have time to think further, and immediately drank a bottle of concealment potion. Although she couldn't confirm whether the Thorn Captain had discovered her, Su Luo still felt that she should prioritize caution above all else. This was the last bottle of concealment potion in her possession. After Su Luo drank it, her body quickly became transparent, and other people could no longer see her. However, smack, a ball of mud just happened to hit her right on her forehead. This ball of mud smashed so hard against Su Luo's head that it made her dizzy and dumb like a wooden chicken. It took her a moment to react. "Dang it, I've actually been found by the Thorn Captain. Seriously?" At this moment, everyone's gaze was drawn to the Thorn Captain's actions, and they all gazed towards that little splatter of mud floating in the air. Chapter 2388. Nangong 1. However, the target of the mud was so large that even if they couldn't see the person, they could still see the mud spot. And so, without the need for the Thorn Captain's command, everyone instantly occupied all sides and directions, encircling Su Luo, surrounding her in a watertight notion. Of course, Su Luo wanted to use celestial spirit water to wash it clean. But there was a problem. How cunning was the Thorn Captain? After he smashed mud on Su Luo's head, he immediately followed up by splashing her with a basin of blood. Su Luo didn't even know why the Thorn Captain was carrying a basin of blood with him. Of course, this was not the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter was that Su Luo had been drenched in blood. At this moment, her shiny self had instantly been smashed into revealing her original appearance. The concealment potion was declared a failure. When Chu Yang saw the blood-stained face, he was at first shocked, then enraged. "It's you!" Chu Yang gritted his teeth and stared at Su Luo, wanting nothing more than to turn her bones into ashes. Su Luo. It was actually Su Luo. Chu Yang clearly remembered. Back then it had been this wretched girl who caused an explosion and then stole away his crystal fragments. Yes, 6 crystal fragments. Chu Yang took a big step towards Su Luo. "Hand over the crystal fragments." The crystal fragments now concerned his little sister's life. I had to get a hold of them, but Su Luo's face was full of innocence and confusion. What crystal fragments? Chu Yang was so angry that smoke nearly rose from his chest, still dared to deny it. "Those 6 crystal fragments you stole?" "Hey, you can't just say these things carelessly. Do you have any evidence? Did you see me with your own eyes stealing them? Did you personally find them by searching my body?" Su Luo questioned back, one sentence after another. Chu Yang couldn't answer with a single word, but instead, he was so angry he laughed. "Personally search your body for it? Wretched girl, I have to say, you've presented a good idea." Even before he finished speaking, Chu Yang forced his way up and grabbed Su Luo's arm with his 5 fingers. Su Luo had said so much, but it was for nothing more than to numb these people's senses. She would not be so stupid as to wait here for these people to catch her. Just as Chu Yang reached out to grab Su Luo, and just as the Thorn Captain put up his guard to prevent her from running away, in an instant, for Su Luo's actually appeared all around them. Everyone. Their eyes were like the shape of swirls, very dizzying, because in front of them there were actually 4 Su Luos. Furthermore, whether it was from what they were wearing to their expressions, they were all completely identical. What exactly was going on here? Everyone was struck dumb and did not know how to react. But Su Luo did not, however, wait for them to react, before her figure had already flashed away. 4 Su Luos sped away in 4 different directions. Lung Chi asked, "Chase which one?" Chu Yang looked at the Thorn team. After seeing your sister you died, his side's battle strength had been reduced to just him and Lung Chi. But Lung Chi had to protect Xiao Luo and simply could not leave. In the Thorn team, because 064 had died, there were 4 people still remaining. Number 066 and 068, you all give chase east. Number 062 goes west. I, as the captain, will give chase to the north. The Thorn Captain's calm voice held a hint of killing intent. If you can't bring her back alive, then just bring back the corpse. This was an order to kill without mercy. Order received. The Thorn team took 3 directions, leaving 1 for Chu Yang. Chapter 2389. Nangong 2. Thus, everybody split up and ran faster than they ever had before. Su Luo bolted ahead, and as she looked back, "Oh dear, this really is bad luck." If anyone else was chasing Su Luo, she would be confident in dealing with them. But the one chasing her now was the Thorn Captain. Was it just bad luck, or did the Thorn Captain have particularly sharp eyes that could recognize me in a moment? When the Thorn Captain saw Su Luo turn her head to glance at him, he immediately deduced, "Wench, you must be the real Su Luo. If she were a fake, How could she be so lifelike? Su Luo looked back again and made a face. So what if I'm the real Su Luo? Can you keep up? Ah! The Thorn Captain sped up and arrived right behind Su Luo in the mere blink of an eye. Just by reaching out his arm, he could almost catch her, but at this moment, Su Luo really was caught. But another Su Luo sprung into view and frantically sprinted away for her life. The Thorn Captain looked at the Su Luo in his hands. She must have been a clone that meant to stall for time. Without a second thought, he threw her to the side in frustration and then pursued the other Su Luo like he was flying. Damn wench, who knows how she did it? And to think she could still divide into more bodies. Su Luo was smashed against the wall. The impact made her see stars, her vision blurred, and a small bump appeared on her forehead. SS. Su Luo sucked in a cold breath as she touched the red swell. The Thorn Captain was seriously strong. It hurt so much that I was going numb. Su Luo placed her hand on the wall, stood up shakily, and faced the Thorn Captain, who was a small black dot in the distance. A triumphant smile split her face. Idiot! Ever heard of reverse psychology? Su Luo put her hands on her hips, complacently rubbing the base of her nose. When the real is fake, the fake is real. When the fake is real, the real is fake. Real and fake. Fake and real, I'll let you have your fill of it. Su Luo had indeed originally planned to let the Thorn Captain catch her double, and buy time for her actual self to escape. But just as she was about to get caught, Su Luo had a flash of inspiration. She'd thought of a plan to do the unexpected. The Thorn Captain wasn't stupid, but people often had a lapse in judgment and acted according to their instincts and past experiences when pressed for time. Under those circumstances, there wouldn't have been enough time for him to think things through. Since Su Luo had recognized this, she took the risk of letting herself get captured by the Thorn Captain, and as a result, she luckily escaped a disaster. The Thorn Captain was long gone chasing the clone, and Su Luo headed off in the opposite direction. But just as she turned a street corner, she came face to face with Chu Yang. Dang it! Su Luo silently cursed. She clearly didn't check her fortunes before she went out today. Just as she shook off the Thorn Captain, she immediately ran into Chu Yang. When Chu Yang saw Su Luo, he paused. Then, seeing her turn tail and flee, he immediately gave chase. Being tailed by Chu Yang, Su Luo could only return to where she lost the Thorn Captain. Chapter 2390. Nangong 3. If it were just Chu Yang alone, that would still be okay. However, when a person had bad luck, even cooled water would get stuck in their teeth when they drank it. Su Luo was currently in such a situation. Just as she retreated to her earlier spot, the Thorn Captain ran back toward that same spot. With one in front and another at the rear, the two supreme experts blocked off Su Luo's exit paths, leaving her stuck in the middle. Su Luo. Then with a wave of her hand, all four of her clones were immediately summoned back to her. However, the Thorn Captain and Chu Yang had long since anticipated this situation. So, right at the instant when she summoned her clones, Dark Star, something shot out from the Thorn Captain's fingertips. Now, there was a pitch-black little in the space between Su Luo's eyebrows. It was as distinct as a birthmark. Su Luo unconsciously lifted her hand and touched it, but she couldn't rub the mark off no matter how hard she tried. Raising her head to look around, it made her gloomy that none of her four clones had this mark on their forehead. In other words, she was currently a crane in a flock of chickens very easy to identify. With a wave of her hand, she kept away her four clones. After all, it was useless to have them out since it was impossible for these clones to have the same combat ability as her. Su Luo, let's see where you'll flee to now. The Thorn Captain and Chu Yang trapped Su Luo in the middle, walking closer to her step by step. At this time, the two teams' dispersed group members quickly approached this area after being called over by their respective team leaders. Su Luo was currently being ambushed by enemies on all sides. Isolated and without help, she fell into desperate straits. Since your hands are tied, wait to be captured. The Thorn Captain sneered malevolently. He took a step forward and clamped down on Su Luo's right shoulder with his large hand. Suddenly, an unforeseen event occurred at this moment. Ah! A mournful shriek abruptly burst out from the Thorn Captain. Everyone stared blankly as the Thorn Captain's arm broke away from his body and slowly fell behind him, as if in slow motion. Furthermore, when this arm was in midair, it was shaken so hard that it broke into pieces. By the time it landed on the ground, it was already a lump of badly mangled flesh. Everyone was astonished. Everyone was stunned. They all had an expression that was like they'd just seen a ghost. What the heck had just happened? All the people present merely watched as the Thorn Captain stared ahead to his left with a frightened gaze. His body trembled incessantly. This was an extremely fearful, instinctual reaction. Consequently, everyone followed his gaze and looked unwaveringly in the same direction. Soon after, an imposing person emerged from there. A snow-white figure appeared slowly like in a scene of the sky clearing up to reveal the moon, letting the people bask in its light. While everyone was refocusing their gaze, they realized that person had already floated down to Su Luo's side and was currently gazing lovingly at Su Luo. It was as if everyone else had become statues that were just part of the background. What sort of man was that? He was dressed in clothes that were whiter than snow, and the hem of his robes had a flowing contour like that of drifting clouds at the horizon. The man had on a silver butterfly mask. It exposed his pitch-black eyes, which were like dots of ink, and his elegant and gorgeous jawline. Even though he was wearing a mask, he was still so beautiful that it made others gasp in admiration. His beauty seemed to turn all of the compliments in the world into empty words that were just for show. His bearing gave others a profoundly mysterious desire to adore him. He seemed refined and elegant, yet also indolent and undisciplined. The only thing anyone could be sure of was that his erratic movements had a power and imperiousness that could end lives at any time. This kingly aura caused everyone to hold their breath with rapt attention and even made them want to bow down and worship him. No one dared to speak up and interrupt this moment. Chapter 2391, Nangong 4. However, the moment the Thorn Captain looked at him, his face started to twitch uncontrollably. Everyone assumed that it was due to his hatred towards the latter for cutting his hand off, but no one had expected for him to react like that. His knees hit the floor with a thud. Please allow this lowly one to pay respect to His Highness, Lord Luoying. Lord Luoying? The rest of the team members looked at each other. Nevertheless, they proceeded to kneel down one by one, calling Lord Luoying's name in awe. Su Luo looked at the masked man with suspicion. Su Luo knew without a doubt that this person must be Nangong Luoying. Why did they call him Lord Luoying? Luoying, Luoying, Su Luo's one? As she was thinking, Su Luo's heart suddenly trembled, while complex emotion surged out from her heart without restraint. The silver-masked lord turned his head and shot a cold and indifferent gaze at the Thorn Captain with his dark, icy eyes. In an instant, the once arrogant and proud Thorn Captain appeared just like a devout worshipper, small and weak as an ant, before Lord Luoying. Lord Luoying snorted. The Thorn Captain felt as though someone had squeezed his throat to the point of suffocation. From the looks of it, Lord Luoying's attitude toward the stinky girl seemed to be remarkably well. This left the Thorn Captain baffled. What is it? Lord Luoying's hazy eyes swept toward the Thorn Captain's arms. Without saying a word, the Thorn Captain pulled out the objects. They were 2 crystal shards. Observing the situation, the Thorn Captain noticed that Lord Luoying looked interested in the crystal shards. He presented them to him with a flattering smile. They aren't of much use, but they're pretty good-looking, you. Before the Thorn Captain finished speaking, he saw Lord Luoying flick his finger. Both of the crystal shards bounced towards Su Luo. Su Luo's heart was filled with happiness. All of these people are bastards, but my Nangong is still the best. He knows what I like. Su Luo stretched out her arm and caught the crystal shards in her hands before playing with them lovingly. These were the last 2 pieces out there. After getting away from these people, Su Luo planned to return to the spirit transformation pond and quickly upgrade the light attribute. As of now, she had many clones in her disposal. However, in light of recent events, Su Luo had realized that these clones were only good for show, as they were utterly useless when it came to combat strength. They weren't even strong enough to withstand a slap. While Su Luo dwelled in her joyful thoughts, others were not nearly in as good of a mood. The suffocating aura radiating from Lord Luoying made each of them feel as though they were carrying a towering mountain on their backs, leading to their bodies teetering on the verge of being crushed by the weight. Do you like it? The gentle tone Lord Luoying used when he whispered to Su Luo sounded as though he was coaxing his beloved baby. This contrasting behavior brought those who were kneeling to tears. They're dead meat. Who would have thought that Su Luo had such a good relationship with Lord Luoying? Just before this, they were chasing Su Luo to the end of the world. The most unlucky one of them all was the Thorn Captain, due to the fact that he was caught by Lord Luoying trying to murder Su Luo. As a result, his right arm was severed. Currently, the Thorn Captain didn't even care about his right arm. The only request he had was an exceedingly minor one, which was to keep his life. This right arm was of no importance compared to that. He just had to hope that the stinky girl would not recklessly report a complaint. Chapter 2392, Nangong, 5. Unfortunately, there were times when every single of one's fears would eventually become reality. Just when everyone was brimming with anxiety, Lord Luoying turned his head around. His brilliant eyes were like shining pearls, imitating their brilliance and soft waves. Gently he said, "Were they bullying you?" A wave of dizziness struck everyone. They proceeded to look towards Su Luo all at once. "Please, miss, we beg of you, don't tell the truth." The very people who had chased Su Luo earlier were now kneeling in front of her with bitter and teary faces, weakly begging her in silence. Su Luo tilted her head and touched her chin, giving an appearance of her dwelling in thought. Everyone held eager and pleading gazes at Su Luo. Then Su Luo asked, "Does chasing to kill someone count as bullying?" Lord Luoying's once indifferent stare suddenly turned into one akin of a peerless sword that had been drawn out of its sheath. He looked at them as though they were ants. The gaze was so cold that it seemed like the surrounding air had condensed into frost. The silent anger in his eyes made these people tremble with fright, turning their faces pale, and left the weak teetering on the brink of unconsciousness. Chase to kill? Lord Luoying played with the ring on his thumb. A dense, dark shade hung over his face, as though dark clouds were brewing within. Nevertheless, an unwavering smile was present as he spoke. Such slyness left the Thorn Captain wanting to cry. Having followed Lord Luoying for a few days, he knew that the brighter the nobleman smiled, the more vicious his follow-up actions would be. He once saw for himself that a companion had gone behind Lord Luoying's back to tell things to the queen. As punishment, Lord Luoying peeled and cut off that person's skin and flesh piece by piece in front of the queen. Blood covered the whole interior of the queen's palace. Yet throughout it all, the queen held a glass of amber wine in her hand and a smile at the corner of her mouth, looking at Lord Luoying tenderly. Thinking of this, the fear in Thorn Captain's heart infinitely magnified. He didn't dare to report the unusual relationship between Lord Luoying and Su Luo to the queen. "You all deserve to die." Lord Luoying grinned. Yes, we deserve to die, but Lord Luoying, please give us a way to survive." Who wanted to die if they could live? After all, you would lose everything if you die. Life or death sentence. Lord Luoying rolled his eyes. With his slender white fingers, he raised Su Luo's jaw slightly. "My dear, what do you say?" Lord Luoying had handed over the decision to Su Luo. After hearing this, the Thorn team fell into despair. Having treated Su Luo so poorly before, how could she spare our lives? We could resist, but in front of Lord Luoying, that would only lead to a quicker death with no chance to escape. Therefore, they couldn't even think of resisting even after seeing the appearance of the formidable man. At this moment, All eyes were focused on Su Luo. Who would have thought that Su Luo, who was previously in a state of distress of a trapped beast, would turn the situation around so quickly? With a single word and a blink of an eye, she could decide their fate. Su Luo played with her hair spiritedly, a gentle smile akin to that of a lively summer flower blooming on her face. Eh? Eh? Life or death sentence. Each word Su Luo said was like a heavy blow hitting the captain and the others. Each word she slowly pronounced magnified their torment. Chapter 2393. Nangong 6? That's a really tough question. Su Luo let out a long sigh and yawned. How about this, you guys go ahead and collect the dark heart shards first. Whether you can survive or not will depend on your capabilities. In other words, they would live if they were able to collect all the dark heart shards. Su Luo's conditions instantly made them nearly go wild with excitement. Good. Dark heart shards, right. We'll head off now to collect them. After the Thorn Captain finished speaking, he glanced at their Lord Luoying inquiringly. They couldn't figure out why Lord Luoying would help an outsider and bully his own people. Nonetheless, none dared to ask this question. After all, nobody would want to risk their lives like that. Lord Luoying nodded his head. Brimming with desperation, the Thorn Captain led his 3 men and quickly fled from there. Chu Yang also wanted to take advantage of the chaos to run away, but he suddenly found that he couldn't move his body at all. He didn't even have the strength to outstretch a finger. Something was awfully wrong. This didn't just happen to him. The same thing also happened to Lung Qi. With a grin on her face, Su Luo walked up and shot a condescending look at Chu Yang before speaking out in a sarcastic tone. Do you think you still can leave now? Overwhelmed with anxiety, Chu Yang stared at Su Luo angrily. You can kill me, but let my sister go. Su Luo laughed. If you want your sister to be let off, you have to tell me who you are working for, who made me take the wrong task, and who asked you to kill me. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and turned his head away. Swish! Su Luo waved her hand. A black shadow flashed out, followed by the crack of a whip. Ah! Xiao Luo let out a mournful and painful cry. Su Luo did not whip Chu Yang. She knew that she couldn't threaten him with physical pain. But his sister was different. Xiao Luo was dying. Her breath was faint like a cat, and she wouldn't be able to withstand the whip. Sure enough, after Su Luo had grasped onto Chu Yang's weakness, he immediately gave up resistance. Stop! I will tell you. Say it. Su Luo showed that she was focusing on what he was about to say, all while holding up her whip. Xiao Luo would suffer if he lied. Chu Yang gnashed his teeth out of his hatred for Su Luo. Nevertheless, he had no other choice but to spill the beans. It's Lu Xiaoyu. Who is Lu Xiaoyu? Su Luo had no impression of such a name at all. Fairy Wu Yu's fanatic admirer. His grandfather works in the mission hall. Now that he had spilled the beans, Chu Yang didn't care about how much he said anymore. Does Fairy Wu Yu know about this matter? Su Luo sneered. In fact, she already had an answer in her heart. Fairy Wu Yu paid the deposit herself. Chu Yang snorted coldly. Su Luo smiled faintly. Sure enough, Fairy Wu Yu was indeed the person that framed me. Can you let us go now? Chu Yang's stiff and harsh voice rang out beside Su Luo's ears. Did I say I would let you go? Su Luo put on a disingenuous and bewildered face. Chu Yang was livid with anger. If he had not been restrained, he would have definitely rushed up and taken Su Luo to the grave with him. Su Luo smiled coldly and looked at Xiao Luo. Since you told me the truth, I won't make you suffer. So let me tell you the truth too. Chu Yang had a hunch that this truth would be cruel. As expected, Su Luo smiled and said, Actually, it was not your sister who killed number 064. All of you had misunderstood her. When Xiao Luo heard these words, large beads of tears proceeded to drip from her eyes. Chapter 2394. Nangong 7. Xiao Luo was wronged. She had thought that she would never be able to clear it up in this life. Moreover, she would never expect that Su Luo, her enemy, would be the one to help her clarify this matter. Could it be you? Chu Yang stared at Su Luo, while what seemed like two anger-filled flames erupted from the bottom of his eyes. Su Luo shrugged and enthusiastically told Chu Yang the whole story of how she had attacked both parties and, ultimately, caused an unexpected incident. Therefore, I'm the one who killed number 064. Those 8 crystal shards from before are all in my possession. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also have another attribute. It's called the light element. You. Chu Yang was filled with so much anger, he proceeded to spit blood out. What the heck was this? Earlier, he had deliberately transferred out the people in Su Luo's group and replaced them with a few of his own, all for the sake of killing Su Luo. However, who would have known that he actually led the wolf into the house? 8 crystal shards, plus the 2 in Su Luo's hand. Chu Yang really wanted to cry. In fact, Su Luo was currently in a dilemma. She looked at Lord Luoying. How should we deal with these peoples? Nangong Luyun pecked on Su Luo's lips before revealing an ambiguous smile. How difficult can that be? Just kill all of them. Chu Yang was immediately shocked to the core. A look flashed across his eyes as he looked at Lord Luoying, who gave him a familiar feeling of someone he had seen before. You. Suddenly, a bright light burst forth from Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Yang remembered that chin and that pair of eyes. Who else could it be but the disciple who was most important to the city lord? However, this person had actually entered the thorn. Chu Yang was so excited about the discovery of this secret. Taking advantage of the situation, he covertly took out the communication amulet, lit the name of Fairy Wu Yu, and shouted, "The Thorn's Lord Luoying is Nangong Luyun of Purgatory City." Chu Yang knew for sure that he was bound for death. However, even if he was to die, he would pull everyone down with him. Just as Chu Yang shouted these words, he lowered his head and saw a thin wind blade stuck in his throat. The wind blade pierced his neck and penetrated through the back. Chu Yang could feel his life draining away. The Reaper was now walking, step by step, towards him. Even if I die, you can't live either, Nangong Luyun. Purgatory City and the Thorn will never allow a traitor like you to exist. Even if my squad was to be completely wiped out due to this, I felt that it would be worth it to be able to pull Nangong Luyun down. Chu Yang laughed wildly, to the point of tears coming out of his eyes. Lord Luoying's white slender fingers held the silver butterfly mask on his face. There was a flash of white light before the mask disappeared from his face. What kind of face was that? Such a beautiful face. Such a magnificent beauty. How extraordinary, noble, refined, distinguished, and elegant like the flowing wind. This was a face that would make women fall in love at first sight, and men feel ashamed of themselves. Seeing Nangong Luyun reveal himself, one would know that this statement was not false at all. Su Luo looked at Nangong Luyun with joy. The corners of her mouth curled, while her eyes brimmed with arrogance and pride. This man, who was graceful, noble, and extraordinary, belonged to her, Su Luo. Nangong Luyun held Su Luo's hand tightly, a smile gleaming within his eyes. After gazing at her for a long time, he reluctantly moved his eyes towards Chu Yang. He said 3 words with casual indifference. "You are wrong." Those 3 lightly said words, however, suppressed at once Chu Yang's wild laugh. Chapter 2395. Luyun 1. Please give a big thanks to our beloved sponsor. Thank you for your continued support. Wrong? Chu Yang suddenly had a terrible foreboding surge through his being. Nangong Luyun's mouth hooked up a cool smile, but he didn't say a word as he kept looking at Chu Yang. The bad feeling in Chu Yang's heart became stronger. Lowering his head, he glanced at the communication amulet in his hand. Every name on it appeared in gray. Did that mean the information couldn't be sent out via the communication amulet? Chu Yang raised his head abruptly and trained a hateful gaze onto Nangong Luyun. 2 raging flames burned within his eyes. If it were possible, I really would not wait to rush up and cut this man into pieces. Nangong Luyun revealed an indifferent smile. I'm really sorry, but I set up a barrier in the Temple of Abyss before coming in here. You! Anger and bitterness surged within Chu Yang. "Do you want to open the barrier?" Nangong Luyan asked in a seemingly kind voice. "No kidding. Who wouldn't want to open the barrier?" Chu Yang glared at Nangong Luyan fiercely. However, who would have thought that Nangong Luyan would be so cooperative? From Nangong Luyan's large sleeve, a faint gust of wind whipped out before Chu Yang could see his communication amulet light up. This, unexpectedly, excitement surged within Chu Yang's heart, as he did not expect that Nangong Luyan would be so stupid. Unconsciously, he wanted to continue the call. However, bang, a light sound rang out, and Chu Yang found that his communication amulet was emitting smoke. The thin wisp of smoke came out. Chu Yang couldn't extinguish it even if he wanted to. He could only watch as his communication amulet burned into a piece of charcoal. "You!" Chu Yang gritted his teeth. Nangong Luyan gave him hope before forcefully taking it away. This was more painful than giving no hope in the first place. Red-hot anger gushed out from Chu Yang's eyes as he shot a hatred-filled glare at Nangong Luyan, his hands clenched tightly into fists. "You are making a fool out of me!" Chu Yang roared like a trap beast. "You just noticed it now?" Nangong Luyan spoke calmly, at a speed that was neither fast nor slow. He appeared to be doing so nonchalantly, yet also in a manner that expressed he was inevitably right. "Chu Yang." An explosion went off within Chu Yang's head. His consciousness was eroded by rage, with madness taking over his mind. Before he could process his thoughts, Chu Yang had already started to rush towards Su Luo like a madman. He knew that he could not beat Nangong Luyan. At the same time, he also knew Nangong Luyan cared a lot for Su Luo. Therefore, he had summoned all of his strength to launch an attack at Su Luo. The incoming palm contained earth-shattering might, possessing immeasurable power behind it. If Su Luo were alone, she would definitely not be able to escape the incoming attack. However, a cold smile filled with contempt appeared on Nangong Luyan's face. His sleeve swept out gently like an autumn breeze sweeping across fallen leaves before ruthlessly sweeping a gust of wind towards Chu Yang. Chu Yang's palm force dissipated into nothingness, to the point where Su Luo didn't even feel a slight breeze. The only thing she noticed was Chu Yang's body shooting backwards like a kite with a broken string. Boom! A loud explosion sound rang out. That was the sound of Chu Yang landing on the ground. This was followed up by cracking sounds. Those were sounds of bones breaking within Chu Yang's body. When Su Luo looked over again, all the bones in Chu Yang's body had been broken. Opening his eyes, he shot a confused look at Nangong Luyan. It wasn't until the last moment before he died that he really understood why the people from the Thorn team couldn't even think of resisting when they were faced with Nangong Luyan. He was too powerful. He was so formidable that it would leave people in despair. Nangong Luyan was like a lofty, towering mountain, standing motionless in front of him, like a god with fluttering clothes. Chapter 2396, Luyan 2. Please give a big thanks to our beloved sponsor. Thank you for your continued support. Let go. Chu Yang forced the two words out with difficulty. The corners of Nangong Luyan's mouth maintained their ever-cool and indifferent smile, and his voice was faint. Too late. If the person he had attacked just now was Nangong Luyan, then he might have changed his death sentence to a life sentence of enslavement for 100 years. However, because Chu Yang had made the choice to attack Su Luo at the last moment, his death was sealed. Chu Yang was confused before, but at this moment, after exchanging a look with Nangong Luyan, he completely understood the intention in his gaze. He desperately turned toward Lung Qi, his friend that had been by his side from the very beginning. When Lung Qi saw Chu Yang like this, his heart tightened. He took advantage of this moment to drop Xiao Luo from his arms and fly forward. He ran away that fast, with that kind of desperation. In the blink of an eye, he shrunk into just a tiny black dot. Xiao Luo was left behind on the ground, unmoving. Su Luo rushed up and checked her breathing, then shook her head regretfully at Chu Yang. Nobody would have expected the evil girl that pretended to be innocent to meet this kind of ending, to have fallen to her death. When Chu Yang received this news, his entire body felt as if it was struck by lightning. Fallen to death. In the end, my sister actually fell to death. Ha ha! Chu Yang laughed mournfully, the sound of his laughter harsh and despairing. Laughing and laughing, until the sound of his voice suddenly disappeared. Su Luo looked at Chu Yang's wide open, unwilling dead one, and finally went up and closed his eyelids. Chu Yang's death was hideous and twisted by a kind of hatred that came from being harshly betrayed. Su Luo watched the black, that was nearly out of sight. Was Nangong Luyun going to let Leng Qi run away just like that? Just as she finished her thought, Su Luo saw a thin wind blade burst out from Nangong Luyun's robe with the sound of cutting through air. Then, Su Luo saw with her very own eyes that the little speck that had already run off far away seemed as if its back was held by a thread and pulled backwards. He struggled hard, but it was useless. He was pulled from flying midair, both legs desperately pedaling forward, but his body couldn't keep itself from being pulled backwards. That sight was oddly comical. Leng Qi was pulled back hard, and then dropped heavily to the ground. He couldn't even get back up for quite some time. Nangong Luyun was just trying to win a smile from Su Luo, and now that she had, Leng Qi's use was also gone. As soon as Nangong Luyun released his hand, the wind blade was stabbed into Leng Qi's throat. And so, this Leng Qi was whimpering and wailing. Su Luo silently glanced at Nangong Luyun, and her gaze fell on Chu Yang's figure. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Killing people and looting property. What was the use of Nangong Luyun just killing people? Resources need to be recycled, or else it's all wasted. Su Luo's pair of snow-white jade hands excitedly made their way across Chu Yang's corpse and found out Chu Yang's identity nameplate. What a pity. Since Chu Yang was already dead, there was no way to use his spiritual power again. Su Luo saw the vast amount of points inside, but could not touch them. Nangong Luyun picked Su Luo up and used a handkerchief to forcefully and frustratedly rub at her delicate hands. It really hurts. Nangong Luyun, what are you doing? Su Luo was crying. Before she had recovered from her despair, she was given an arrogant rub from Nangong Luyun, and her fingers were red at the joints. And so, Su Luo's dark eyes glared at Nangong Luyun resentfully. Chapter 2397. Luyun 3. You should only be touching me. Nangong Luyun righteously lectured this unruly little girl. Su Luo held her forehead. I didn't touch him. You just did. Nangong Luyun's elegant, immortal temperament was gone, and he immediately transformed into a jealous, difficult little child. You can't touch him like that either. Nangong Luyun pettily emphasized. That was searching just his body for treasure. Where have your thoughts gone to? Su Luo reasonably argued. You just can't touch them. Nangong Luyun snorted. Su Luo was truly defeated by him. This was the Nangong Luyun that had scared away the Thorn Captain with a single look and caused Chu Yang to die with a single smile. But he was like a difficult little child on the inside, needing me to coax him, spoil him, and make way for him. Su Luo grunted twice and turned her head, ignoring him. It was all Nangong Luyun. How could he let them die so quickly when I hadn't even gotten the huge amount of points into her hands? The little person in Su Luo's heart was whacking Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun angrily wore a sullen expression and his long body stiffened. But after waiting for half a day, Su Luo still hadn't given him any attention, and he couldn't help himself anymore. He was still as ever proud as a peacock, but his long and slender hand was moving sneakily. At this time, Su Luo was standing with her back to Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun's bony hand secretly poked Su Luo's back. No response. Another poke. Still no response. Nangong Luyun instantly could not hold it anymore. He looked up at the starry sky and let out a long sigh to the moon. Alas, no matter how powerful I become, I can do nothing but bow my head and admit defeat to this little girl. Nangong Luyun resignedly moved in front of Su Luo, looking at her. Su Luo stubbornly moved to the right. Nangong Luyun followed her to the right. Su Luo again turned away from him defiantly. Nangong Luyun resignedly continued to walk to the right and stood in front of her. Su Luo turned again, and Nangong Luyun followed again. By the time Su Luo had turned an entire circle, Nangong Luyun let out a long sigh. His long arms seized Su Luo, fiercely bringing her into his embrace. His chin rested on her shoulder, and the faint fragrance of her hair blew into his nose. Su Luo couldn't see Nangong Luyun's expression at this moment. Nangong Luyun's heartfelt, deeply distressed, extremely pitiful expression. Su Luo subconsciously wanted to push him away. Nangong's dull voice spoke slowly. "Don't move, and let me hold you for a little bit. Just let me hold you for a little bit." His voice was low, carrying a hint of sleepy exhaustion. Nangong Luyun's voice had always been clear and mellow, but at this moment, there was distinct tiredness in his exhalation, causing Su Luo just a moment of heartache. "Are you very tired?" Su Luo asked weakly. "Could I not be tired?" After hearing the news of this little girl being chased, I came out of the 10,000-year-old glacial pond, killed my way out of the 10,000-weight mountains. The entire road here, I had to overcome one and were the stars and the two. It hadn't been easy at all to finally rush here. There hadn't even been time to catch my breath in between the anxiety and stress. But, full of words, in the end, he just turned them into a single sentence. "To see you safe. What does it matter if I'm 100 times more tired?" That sentence was nothing more than the usual sweet words, but listening to it, Su Luo's heart felt incomparably comforted. A bitter, yet incomparably sweet feeling filled up the cavity in Su Luo's chest. "Fool," Su Luo whispered softly. Nangong Luyun said he would just hold her for a while, but breathing in Su Luo's fragrance had unleashed all the fatigue he had forcefully ignored. And at last, Su Luo could no longer let go of him because the steady sound of his breathing was transmitted to her ears. Chapter 2399. Luyun 5. Nangong Luyun lowered his head and looked closely at Su Luo. Su Luo felt a burning gaze following her. Feeling pleased in her heart, she raised her head to meet his eyes. Nangong Luyun's clear eyes glowed like obsidian and had such a depth to draw others in like a magnet, sucking people in so that they simply could not move their eyes away. He leaned down Su Luo, however, let out a clear cough and spanked his buttocks. "Okay, you could be more open." Nangong Luyun's plan fell through, and he grimaced in exasperation. Su Luo was completely speechless when it came to this childish grown man. She rolled her eyes and led Nangong Luyun to the dining table. Although it was outside, the surrounding decorations were still very pleasing to the eye. The pure white plush carpet, the long square-shaped table that was covered with a tablecloth for this occasion, and delicate flowers. For dishes and 2 bowls of congee had already been neatly arranged. Nangong Luyun looked at the 4 dishes, and his eyes flashed with a bright color. But thinking of Su Luo, this girl refusing his kiss, specifically deliberately wore a sullen expression again. He silently took a seat, picked up his chopsticks, and methodically ate. Nangong Luyun waited half a day, but still hadn't heard a word from Su Luo, so he felt greatly discouraged in his heart. He took the spoon and dug out a spoonful of congee, then suddenly glanced at Su Luo. "Is there nothing you want to ask?" Su Luo raised her eyebrows. Nangong Luyun's tone of voice was unkind. "For example, somebody showing something to you? Each person's communication amulet could only be picked up by themselves, others could not. However, there was an exception here where, for example, one's personally raised spirit pet could also help their master pick up a call." Nangong Luyun looked at Su Luo's name in the communication amulet 8 to 10 times a day, so he had instantly spotted the last call's record. However, he was puzzled because he had no memory of this call record. Looking at the time, his body had still been recuperating in the 10,000-year-old glacial pond at that time. And so, Nangong Luyun didn't think any further and directly went to forcefully press Little Plum Blossom for answers. Previously, he had been severely injured, and the Little Plum Blossom had exhausted 2/3 of its own heart and soul to save him. But Nangong Luyun at that time had actually gripped the Little Plum Blossom's neck, nearly killing her on the spot. That was when he found out the circumstances of what had happened. Su Luo listened to Nangong Luyun's words, her gaze calmly glancing at him, and then she continued to bury her head in the kanji. Nangong Luyun. I had especially rushed over here to explain this to her, yet she was actually indifferent to it? After hearing the Little Plum Blossom's threats and insults, shouldn't she be angry? Knowing the existence of the Little Plum Blossom, shouldn't she be jealous? Nangong Luyun threw the spoon back into the seafood kanji with a bang, and a pair of beautiful, big, black eyes contrasting his pearly white pupils glared at Su Luo angrily. Su Luo continued to calmly take bites of her kanji, picking up cucumbers garnished with sauce using her chopsticks and then baby vegetables with her chopsticks, eating very calmly and coolly. Nangong Luyun grew even angrier, and his tone was harsh. Hey, are you listening? Su Luo nodded calmly. This reaction was not what Nangong Luyun was expecting. When he saw Su Luo being this calm, his heart was about to heave with anger, and so he began to deliberately irritate Su Luo. Su Luo went to pick up cucumbers, but his chopsticks were one step ahead of hers. Su Luo went to pick up baby vegetables, but his chopsticks were once again one step ahead of hers, picking up the leaf that her chopsticks had been aiming for. Seeing the angry Nangong Luyun, Su Luo felt that this was way too much fun. So, she simply put down her chopsticks and silently lowered her head to drink her kanji. The result was that she had just scooped a spoonful of kanji into her mouth when Nangong Luyun had already stolen away the white bowl of porridge and placed it right in front of him. Su Luo. Chapter 2400. Luyun 6. Are you letting me eat or not? Su Luo felt exasperated. She put down the spoon and wiped her mouth elegantly with a soft, clean napkin. Nangong Luyun was silent. Seething with anger, he just glared at her with all his strength. This beautiful man used only his pretty pair of eyes, each dark and swirling with depth, to express his displeasure for his supposed mistreatment, as well as his stubbornness. Su Luo sighed and threw her hands to surrender. What were we talking about earlier? Nangong Luyun snapped. He stood up and pushed the chair away to leave. Su Luo quickly followed, pressing him onto a complex and exquisite flower-patterned chair to calm him down. She didn't sit back in her seat. She just stood there, leaning back on the table and keeping both hands on his shoulders as she smiled down at him. You asked me because you want to know if I'm mad or not, right? Su Luo was right on point. Humph! Nangong Luyun was being thorny, hiding his warm and tender side. To be honest, I really wasn't mad. Su Luo smiled slightly. Su Luo's casual, nonchalant attitude really pissed Nangong Luyun off. He stared daggers at Su Luo, moved the chair back, and at her sulkily. Su Luo smiled with curved eyes. She found Nangong Lu's childish act to be both adorable and a bit unbecoming of him. She took the chance to pinch the cheeks of Nangong Luyun's one gorgeous face and said with a teasing grin, "Why did you think I would be mad?" Nangong Luyun's eyes fluttered to and fro, and his attitude suddenly changed, playing hard to get. Honestly, Little Plum Blossom is not bad at all. Actually, she's very pretty, thoughtful, she knows how to take care of people, and most importantly, she loves me deeply. Nangong Luyun glared at Su Lu and emphasized his words. She loves me very, very much. Su Luo almost burst into audible laughter. Was Nangong Luyun trying to make me burn with jealousy? Su Luo hesitated on whether to play along with him or not. She thought for a while and remembered the words Little Plum Blossom had cursed at her. Humph, Nangong Luyun, you brought this upon yourself when you took in that hateful Little Plum Blossom. I will not give you what you want. Su Luo returned to her seat, grabbed a handful of fragrant fried pine nuts from her pocket. She carefully shelled each one and savored them. Nangong Luyun knitted his brows tightly. Su Luo didn't pay any attention to him at all. She treated me like thin air. Nangong Luyun was very displeased. Su Luo. His voice took on a heavier tone. Su Luo bribed him by putting the pine nut she'd already shelled into Nangong Luyun's mouth. How was this little bit of fawning enough? Nangong Luyun leisurely swallowed the food as he kept scolding Su Luo with a straight face. Are you really not worried? That little plum blossom and I went through thick and thin. She can see every part of my body that you haven't yet seen. You really are not angry about this? I was with her from morning till night, spent every day opposite to her, and fought off enemies with her. Are you really not jealous at all? Nangong Luyun crossed his legs, looking extremely pleased. Su Luo recalled what little plum blossom said earlier. She glared at him coldly, with an unreadable expression inside her dark eyes. Her stare made chills run down his spine. Abruptly, Su Luo stood up, leaned over, and looked down at Nangong Luyun from above. Their breaths tangled with each other with barely any distance at all. Su Luo boldly stepped on his chair with one foot. Her slender finger lifted Nangong Luyun's smooth chin. This pose definitely made her look like an evil tyrant taking liberties with the village women. Su Luo pulled out this pose with no awkwardness in her movement. It even made her look charismatic in contrast to her usual image. Nangong Luyun played along instantly. He immediately covered his chest like a harassed woman. With a guarded expression, he said, what are you trying to do? Chapter 2401. Luyun 7. Su Luo smirked and pinched his cheek with one hand. Sir, can you smile for this girl? Those glistening red lips, moist and plump, seemed like smooth and fragrant honey. Su Luo secretly wanted to take a bite of them. Nangong Luyun looked at Su Luo. Girl, you're playing with fire. Su Luo didn't give him any time to think and bent over, firmly planting her lips on his. But it was only for a second. Before Nangong Luyun could react, she had already pulled away, rubbing her chin and contentedly eyeing him up and down. Tut tut tut, inexperienced kissing technique and poor reflexes, Nangong Luyun. The heavens gave you such great assets, but you don't make use of them. Isn't that such a waste? Inexperienced kissing technique? Nangong Luyun's eyes were set ablaze with vigorous, burning flames, and his voice turned husky. Girl, you're becoming even more impudent. Su Luo snuggled into his chest, her arms embracing his lean waist, and took in a deep breath. It's great to be able to hug you like this. It's great that you would travel day and night over thousands of miles to save me. You're so great. What reason could I have to not trust you? Nangong Luyun stiffened, then relaxed and held her tightly in his embrace, affectionately rubbing her head. Then what about you messing with me just now? Su Luo giggled. You fool. How could I be mad at someone who treats me well? How could I not trust you? But if you want to act like you were wronged, then I'll play along with you. This girl. Nangong Luyun lifted her chin with his hand and fixed a wicked gaze at her. She had her way with me just now. If I didn't do the same back, I would have lost. Thus, he leaned in and seized Su Luo's plump, rosy lips. His kiss wasn't violent. It was gentle and soft, light and slow, like a drizzle of rain. This deep kiss was full of his love for her. In the end, he finally let go of Su Luo's lips, his eyes deeply filled with tenderness. As the light of the early morning sun appeared, soft, orange rays of light scattered from behind him, making him appear hazy. He lowered his head, placing his forehead against Su Luo's as they took in each other's breaths. He looked at her smile. She looked at his smile. Unwilling to ruin the moment, the two stayed still in a way that seemingly stopped time itself. They were truly lovesick fools. I'll miss you. Nangong Luyun tenderly caressed Su Luo's delicate cheeks. After this farewell, I don't know when we will meet again. You're leaving? Su Luo's eyes filled with worry. Leave. Of course, I had to leave. As long as the matter with the thorn wasn't settled, how could I return worry-free? Will you miss me? Nangong Luyun embraced her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder as they watched the sunrise. His voice was gentle and fluid, like feathers brushing over Su Luo's heart. It was hard for her to bear. Just when will you truly return to my side? Su Luo asked, downcast. Just when will you truly become a grandmaster apothecary? Nangong Luyun's breath on her sensitive ears caused her body to become weak. I'll definitely be there faster than you, Su Luo declared with confidence. You're Empress. You have no way of getting her to move, right? I'm telling you, I can refine Grandmaster pills once in a while, but to advance to Grandmaster Apothecary, I still need 2 more ingredients. Don't you worry, I'll definitely be able to manage by myself. Chapter 2402 Tenderness 1 Nangong Luyun rubbed Su Luo's head. Did this girl not realize what would come once she became a Grandmaster Apothecary? Did she not know that once he lived with her, the cold poison that had accumulated in his body over years and years would be released? Was she unaware of how greatly his strength would increase by then? Which 2 ingredients? Do you need my help? Nangong Luyun offered with a smile. Su Luo knew that Nangong Luyun had heavy responsibilities and didn't want to add more to his troubles. So she shook her head. It's okay. I can handle it myself. Because the 2 of them were rarely together, she did not tell Nangong Luyun of the burdens that plagued her heart. The 2 of them held hands and strolled around the Temple of the Abyss. Nangong Luyun also did not mention the matter of their parting, nor did he say when he would return. Instead, he allowed Su Luo to pull him along, walking slowly into the Temple of the Abyss. Nangong Luyun didn't deliberately release a strong aura that stemmed from his cultivation, so there would occasionally be ignorant magical beasts blindly bumping into them. Nangong Luyun also didn't waste much time with them, swinging the hem of his clothes a few times so that the magical beasts would fall to the ground. Su Luo's eyes suddenly widened. Wait, what's wrong? Nangong Luyun asked while helping Su Luo clear the way. You beat them until they are on their last breaths. Then leave them to me. Then, Su Luo had a sudden thought. She drew out the diamond token and waved it in front of Nangong Luyun triumphantly. This is a diamond token. The points will be multiplied by 5 when you kill the magical beasts. You're short on points? Nangong Luyun frowned slightly. If you don't have enough points, go get them from the 8th Elder. I know that you took care of the 8th Elder. He is now very obedient and never dares to say no. But I want a large amount of points. I'm afraid that forcing the 8th Elder's hand will eventually lead to a mutiny. Su Luo told Nangong Luyun about when she went to the auction and ended up spending a lot of money just to buy a 9 and 9 Yang falling cloudflower. At the end of her story, Su Luo concluded, if I need to refine Grandmaster grade pills since the success rate is very low, I should not rely on the few points I have. So, you should help me beat up more monsters in these few days. Nangong Luyun smiled bitterly. If those people from the Thorn heard this, would they not die from shock? Did those magical beasts require Lord Luoying himself to beat them up? However, Su Luo's words were more important than life to Nangong Luyun. He could not send the Thorn team, as they were off retrieving the Dark Heart. So, Su Luo and Nangong Luyun teamed up and started grinding. Su Luo baited the monsters, and Nangong Luyun went for the kill. The scene often went like this. Su Luo was exhausted from running around, panting, dripping hot sweat, struggling to lead a large pack of monsters back closely behind her. Then, Su Luo took an opportunity to back away, switching positions with Nangong Luyun. He, Nangong Luyun, was still sitting in the vine chair, leisurely sipping fragrant tea, and when he saw the group of monsters after Su Luo, he shook his robes like he was swatting mosquitoes. Then clap, 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 the magical beasts suddenly lined up and fell backwards one by one like a tarot card dominoes effect. Although Nangong Luyun's control of force was very good, his calculation of the life force of the magical beast was even more accurate. If the calculation of vitality of the magical beast was similar to Heath bars used in video games, then each of the toppled magical beasts would only have a little sliver of health left. Su Luo swung the Chung Ing sword in her hand and reaped points along the path. Ding dong, Ding-dong, Su Luo's diamond token kept chiming, each ring indicating that an amount of points had been earned. Chapter 2403, Tenderness 2. These magical beasts were not that weak, so each was worth 4,000 points. And Su Luo's diamond token, which had a 5 times multiplier, made it 20,000 points each. Su Luo was able to bring back 30 to 50 magical beasts each time, which meant that Su Luo was able to earn nearly 1,000,000 points after each trip. This realization made Su Luo leap for joy. This was such a great profit. Following Nangong Luyun had brought good harvests indeed. Su Luo knew that she could only deal with 3 or 5 magical beasts at a time at most, but as for Nangong Luyun, Su Luo raised her eyes towards him. At this time, Nangong Luyun, having just been filled with food and drink, was basking lazily in the sun and beginning to doze off. What an easy, fantastic life. Su Luo wiped away the sweat from her forehead, swung the Chungying sword, and began to lure monsters again. Taking advantage of the fact that Nangong Luyun, a super monster hunter, was here, Su Luo prepared to fight more monsters and earn more points. In the passage of just one day, Su Luo's diamond card had already gained 20 million points. Such a large yield simply left Su Luo speechless. 20 million points, all in just a day of work. Su Luo couldn't help but compare this with how she used to earn points in the past. The results were simply a world of difference, a difference so great they cannot even be compared. When Nangong Luyun saw Su Luo staring at the diamond token like a money grubber, he laughed and patted her head. What's so great about it? 20 million points? Okay. Since coming to Purgatory City, Su Luo had been feeling uneasy because of her light pockets. She spent as much as she earned, even though she was still in debt to the Moonlight Clan. Now it was very good that she earned 20 million points in just one day. No, you cannot leave so soon. At least keep me company here to grind for some more monsters. Su Luo pulled on Nangong Luyun's hand, her dark eyes locked with his. Nangong Luyun smiled bitterly and shook his head. Why did I get the impression that Su Luo values the points more than me? Nangong Luyun shook this thought out of his head and grinned at Su Luo. Well, if you want to farm more points, I can accompany you. I can farm as long and as much as I want. Su Luo's eyes sparkled brightly. Using your method, you will kill off all these monsters in a matter of days. Nangong Luyun tapped on the tip of her nose. Su Luo stuck out her tongue. In a matter of days? Assuming that it took 5 days, I could obtain more than 100 million points by the end of the 5 days. But then she backtracked her thoughts. 100 million points? Su Luo choked and coughed on the number. Nangong Luyun laughed and affectionately patted her back. Isn't it just 100 million points? What's with the fuss? Su Luo gave him a blank look. He was so nonchalant about 100 million points. I was so excited that my legs went limp and I couldn't stand up. Nangong Luyun added, in fact, if you want more points, just go and borrow them as you please. You'll pay them back later? Su Luo's eyes were wide open. Nangong Luyun chuckled. I would like to pay them back, but according to Master, since the entire Purgatory City is yours in the future, the entire Purgatory City's points are also at your disposal. The points can be returned then, when changing hands. Teach, the whole Purgatory City is mine? Su Luo was shocked at this revelation. Nangong Luyun nodded his head matter-of-factly. Teach, the entire Purgatory City's points are all at my disposal? Su Luo pointed at the tip of her own nose. Was I dreaming? Of course, Nangong Luyun spoke casually. You are Master's only successor. If he didn't pass on the Purgatory City to you, who else could he pass it to? You, Su Luo said smoothly. Chapter 2404, Tenderness 3. Nangong Luyun laughed and poked Su Luo's forehead. My princess, I am your guardian knight. Naturally, I think you should be honored. Annoying. Su Luo pushed him away despite how flattered she felt. After an exhausting day, Su Luo was still excited to go lure out some beasts, but Nangong Luoyun stopped her. Time to rest. Nangong Luoyun carried her on his shoulders, taking her to bed. Then suddenly, a flash of lightning struck down from midair. Su Luo jumped in fright. This was no ordinary lightning. That dazzling light nearly blinded Su Luo's eyes, and the following clap of thunder sounded like it exploded right above Su Luo's head. The strange thunder was particularly horrifying. Nangong Luoyun saw Su Luo's face turning a bit pale. He hurriedly pulled her into his arms and patted her back soothingly. It's okay. This is the awakening of the King of the Abyss Temple. The King of the Abyss Temple? Su Luo looked at Nangong Luoyun with confusion. The King of the Abyss Temple is the most powerful existence deep inside of the Abyss, with lightning and light attributes. Nangong Luoyun tucked Su Luo into the bed and then sat beside her. You're not going in there, are you? Su Luo poked his chest. You're scared. Nangong Luoyun's answer was one, but the meaning in it was clear. Seeing Su Luo refrain from voicing too, Nangong Luoyun chuckled and patted her head. Don't worry. Have some rest and sleep. I'm here for you. This sentence of just 4 words, I'm here for you, made Su Luo feel completely at peace. But soon after, Su Luo felt something wasn't right. She had an instinct for sensing danger that was triggered as she suddenly woke up with a start after midnight. Su Luo sat up with beads of sweat covering her pale face. Nangong Luoyun's slender arm wrapped around her and pulled her toward his chest as he muttered half-consciously, Sleep. Su Luo pushed Nangong Luoyun softly. Something is wrong. Hurry and wake up. Nangong Luoyun yawned and fell back asleep. Su Luo could sense the danger, but she couldn't identify what kind of danger it was. Pondering on it, Su Luo patted to wake up little Fox Sable and asked it to share the map. On the map, each of the crisscrossing main pathways in the Temple of the Abyss should have been clear and comprehensible at glance. But at this moment, Su Luo's hands shook lightly, because she saw numerous little black dots crammed into all those main pathways. The dark specks were like scattered sesame seeds, too many to count. Su Luo pushed Nangong Luoyun. Wake up, hurry. Nangong Luoyun's voice sounded nasal. So many? It's the magical beast army. Su Luo's voice shook lightly. This simply isn't a number that can be diminished in only 5 days. Nangong Luoyun replied 3. Really? Su Luo glared at him. How could you be so calm about this? I have a premonition that the magical beast army will definitely march directly to us. Before even finishing her sentence, she slapped her mouth for jinxing 4. In her mind, Su Luo could plainly see a horde that was the magical beast army marching in their direction. Even though Su Luo didn't know how strong these magical beasts were, she was certain that they were no weaker than the ones they'd encountered during the day. There were so many. If we were lucky, there would still be around 10,000 of them. How could we kill them all? Su Luo felt like her brain was almost tied up in a knot. Let's retreat. Su Luo grabbed a hold of Nangong Luoyun and tried to run. Chapter 2405. Tenderness 4. Nangong Luoyun laughed lightly, irritably poking Su Luo's forehead. I know you run very fast, but other than that, can't you do anything else well? Su Luo frowned. Tens of thousands of magical beasts, can you beat them all? And don't forget, you still have injuries. Su Luo looked up at the sky, and the depths of her eyes hazed over. Moreover, tonight is the night of the full moon. On the night of the full moon, Nangong Luoyun's cold poison would attack, and his leg disease would become extremely severe. That kind of pain wasn't something normal people could endure. Nangong Luoyun curled his lips and gazed tenderly at Su Luo. You're worried about me? Duh! Su Luo said plainly. If I don't care about you, who else would I care about? Since you know your own body is unwell, don't force yourself to be strong. Hurry, run with me. Run to where? Nangong Luoyun swept Su Luo into his arms, slowly and methodically playing with her hair. Su Luo maneuvered the map in her mind. With a glance, Su Luo nearly gasped, since Su Lup's location was a corner, and there was only one passage going from north to south. But now, two armies of magical beasts were coming in their direction from north to south and from the south to behind them, respectively. Su Luo silently studied their speed of movement and route, and very quickly, her face grew paler. According to her calculations, the hordes would meet here. Su Luo was just about to ask Nangong Luyun what to do when he fell asleep again. Su Luo thought to herself. Since Nangong Luyun was this passive, just let him be. Even when the sky fell, there was a tall man to hold it up. Thinking of this, Su Luo also felt increasingly calmer. As Su Luo expected, those armies were actually coming in this direction. Their speed of advancement was not fast, but it was steady. 2 hours later, Su Luo's gaze was fixed to the outside. She had discovered that the magical beast armies were very close, and there was only another incense stick of time until they would meet at the square in front of the trapped pair. In the two legions, one side was thunderous lightning magical beasts, and the other was dark magical beasts. They were not of the same faction, and Su Luo was afraid that they were going to duel. Their fears really did come true. Su Luo was still lost in her thoughts when the magical beast armies of both sides surged towards each other violently. From the flashes of lightning and thunder to the massive dark aura of death, all of it was truly frightening. However, a strange situation was revealed. Su Luo found that the two forces seemed to be completely oblivious to their bed, as if they didn't exist at all. "What dash?" Su Luo exclaimed. But then Su Luo's mouth was covered by hand, and she heard Nangong Liuyun's low voice. "Keep it down. If you want an army of magical beasts to come destroy you, then feel free to yell." Su Luo blinked. What in the world did you do? He was actually able to cause two armies of magical beasts to look through them like air? Nangong Luyun wrapped his arm around her, rubbing his fingers behind her. "Guess." Su Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. "Concealing technique?" Nangong Luyun nodded, but then shook his head. "Concealing technique is the most basic technique. Only concealing space can allow your bed to be stuffed into it." Su Luo suddenly understood. No wonder you thought so little of the situation. It was because you mastered concealing space. Concealing space, as the name implied, could hide a section of space, preventing others from seeing or touching it. Chapter 2406. Tenderness 5. So, they were in some kind of concealing space. Su Luo guessed that the range of the concealment space was probably just this bed. "Sound can't be hidden," Nangong Luyun reminded Su Luo with a smile. The two people were in very close proximity. Their noses faced each other, and they were surrounded by each other's breath. "I know." Before her words were even fully spoken, Nangong Luyun had already used hand gestures to show how they could communicate silently. Su Luo was trembling, but she didn't let go of Nangong Luyun's hand. "I haven't reached the Grandmaster level yet." Master had warned her that if she and Nangong Luyun got too intimate before she reached the Grandmaster level, he would be harmed. Su Luo noticed that his face was covered in sweat and was about to wipe it for him, but then Nangong Luyun suddenly pulled Su Luo into his embrace. What? Su Luo's face slammed into his chest, nearly causing a nosebleed. Nangong Luyun held her head down when she was about to raise it. "Stay still." Su Luo could feel the stiffness and tightness in his body, and as she lifted her gaze to the full moon hanging in the night sky, she instantly understood. Cold poison attacked? Su Luo's heart ached slightly in sympathy. Nangong Luyun did not speak, only letting out a soft hum. Su Luo wanted to pull away, but Nangong Luyun simply refused to let her leave, confining her firmly within his embrace. Su Luo could feel the slight trembles coming from Nangong Luyun's body. His hand was tightly clenched into a fist, the blue veins bulging as if they would burst at any moment. To what degree of pain would it take for such a stoic person to shake so uncontrollably? Su Luo's heart ached so hard her tears were about to fall. Suddenly, Su Luo felt his body temperature start to drop rapidly. His skin was as cold as ice, as if he was in an ice cellar. There was even a slight chill coming from him. Nangong Luyun, afraid of hurting Su Luo, released her and pushed her away from him. But how could Su Luo care only about herself? She sprung forward, hugged Nangong Luyun's waist tightly, and clung to him relentlessly like a koala to a tree. Nangong Luyun was amused and laughed half-heartedly, poking Su Luo's head. It's rare for my Luo girl to also throw herself into my arms. This is truly a memorable occasion. Chapter 2407, Tenderness 6. Our team sadly announces that starting from next week, the release rate for DKC will be changed from 3 to 2 per week due to limited staff and funds. Thanks to those who continuously support us. I want to hold you just like this, Su Luo said affectionately, while rubbing her head in Nangong Luyun's arms. Nangong Luyun caressed her slender back, teasing, "Silly girl, you never showed your true feelings in the past. Yet now you are taking the initiative." Su Luo's intention was to distract Nangong Luyun from the pain. "I can do more than that. Do you want to try me?" Su Luo's eyes shined like stars in the dark with a bit of mischief. "Oh!" Nangong Luyun's voice rose at the end. Su Luo leaned over to give him a sweet kiss. But Nangong Luyun turned his head away. "Enough of the teasing. Go back to bed." "No!" Su Luo couldn't help but feel disappointed about being rejected for the first time, but she quickly figured out the meaning behind his words. She became much more determined than before. "You're afraid of hurting me, aren't you?" Nangong Luyun's teeth were clenched because of the pain. She was right about why he was avoiding her. Still, the more he cared for her, the more she wanted to return the favor. Taking advantage of when he was unguarded, Su Luo instantly leaned to him and captured his soft lips. Nangong Luyun felt a current of electricity flow from his throat to his icy heels. Su Luo also noticed the peculiarity. She quickly let go of Nangong Luyun and asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" Nangong Luyun stared at her with disbelief and surprise like she'd done something unimaginable one. "What's wrong?" Su Luo shook his arms hastily. He just looked at her like this without saying anything. What did that even mean? "Luo Luo," Nangong Luyun said with an unusually sentimental tone in his voice. He held Su Luo's hands with delight and pulled her into a hug. "Just now, how did you do that?" "Huh." Su Luo had confusion and annoyance written on her face too. Nangong Luyun asked more specifically this time, "How did you deliver a strike of burning electricity?" He remembered that never happened when he kissed Su Luo in the past. Yet when Su Luo kissed him just a moment ago, an electric current flowed through his body, which forcefully cleared one of his frozen meridians. This left Nangong Luyun amazed. After hearing Nangong Luyun's reasoning, Su Luo snapped out of her confused state and tried to recall what was so different in that particular kiss. But she could not figure it out no matter how hard she tried, so she dragged Nangong Luyun to experiment again. When she released Nangong Luyun, she asked him eagerly, "How was it? Did it work this time? Did it clear a blocked meridian?" Nangong Luyun's facial expression didn't change as he rubbed Su Luo's head. "It's all right. Let's drop this. I'm probably just imagining it." Nangong Luyun was trying to comfort her, which meant it didn't work this time. "No, there must be something I've missed. I'm sure." Su Luo paced around the bed anxiously. Nangong Luyun leaned on the mattress. He continued to look at her tenderly with a smile, even though his body ached all over. Being able to personally see her so worried for him because of his pain made him willing to endure it, even if the pain were magnified 10 or 100 times. He was in agony, but there was a silver lining to this. When Su Luo turned her head over, she saw Nangong Luyun's deep ink-black eyes focus on her with a smile on his extremely beautiful face. Then, she was hit with an epiphany. Chapter 2408, Tenderness 7. Our team sadly announces that starting from next week, the release rate for DKC will be changed from 3 to 2 per week due to limited staff and funds. Thanks to those who continuously support us. I remember now. Su Luo quickly threw herself forward in excitement. Bang! Poor Su Luo slipped and fell straight on top of Nangong Luyan. Nangong Luyan wanted to reach forward to catch her. If it were in the past, only a glance would be enough to stop Su Luo's fall. However, now he could only watch Su Luo smash into his rigid chest. His stiff hands were a bit slow, after all. Seeing Su Luo's pitiful fall, Nangong Luyan rubbed Su Luo's head. "Oh, you're always so impetuous. Your quick temper has not changed at all." Sigh. At this moment, Su Luo already circulated the origin flame in her body, the fallen red lotus. She transformed the fallen red lotus into a fine electric current and delivered it into Nangong Liyun's body softly and carefully. Yes, this was that electric current. Su Luo was calm. She sent in the fallen red lotus methodically, little by little. However, the fallen red lotus was very clearly the nemesis of cold poison. If cold poison had sealed all the meridians in Nangong Liyun's body by turning them into ice, the fallen red lotus that Su Luo sent in was like a lit candle silently melting the ice. The process was slow, but incredibly effective. It felt like a century had passed. Nangong Liyun slowly released Su Luo at last. Their foreheads and the tips of their noses pressed together. They giggled giddily. Su Luo was the first to click back to reality and faked a pout as she stared at Nangong Liyun. Even though the meridians in Nangong Liyun's body hadn't been completely unsealed, his condition had improved a lot compared to before. Now, he looked refreshed and full of energy. His slender pale fingers caressed Su Luo's soft red lips. Maybe even the heavens couldn't bear to see Nangong Liyun and Su Luo's constant separations and provided them this opportunity to get closer. This opportunity even allowed for his illness to be cured. How could he not openly claim his sovereignty over everyone now? At this time, Su Luo had figured something out. It was no wonder that her master asked her to marry Nangong Liyun after reaching Grandmaster of Apothecary. It must have been about the fallen red lotus. Now, as she had achieved Grandmaster of Apothecary, her fallen red lotus had definitely experienced another great leap in its evolution. Wait, a thought suddenly came to Su Luo. She remembered that she had yet to go to the secret dragon territory when her master told her about the marriage. So how did her master know that she would obtain the fallen red lotus after entering the secret dragon territory even before she, the person in question, knew about it? Could it be that everything had always been in the palms of her master's hands? Nangong Liyun glanced at Su Luo. He suddenly covered his head and frowned while letting out a muffled and pained grunt. Chapter 2409. Surprise 1. Our team sadly announces that starting from next week, the release rate for DKC will be changed from 3 to 2 per week due to limited staff and funds. Thanks to those who continuously support us. Seeing Nangong Liyun cry out in pain, Su Luo pounced on him without thinking. She took the initiative to hold up Nangong Liyun's face and offered him a kiss. But Su Luo forgot that Nangong Liyun, in fact, suffered from leg problems. What did his leg problems have to do with headaches? Of course, Nangong Liyun, who was enjoying such treatment, would not remind Su Luo of this point. His heart filled with happiness from Su Luo's embrace and her initiative to offer him a kiss. 2 hours later, the two entangled people eventually separated. It's dawn, Su Luo reminded him. The arrival of dawn meant that Nangong Liyun's period of pain had already passed. Luo, it's so good to have you by my side. Nangong Liyun fondly embraced her in his arms. Tonight was the least painful time out of all the attacks I've had over these 10 years. Su Luo wrapped her arms around his waist and spoke in a solemn tone. Don't worry. I will try my best to become a Grandmaster Apothecary. Nangong Luoyun touched Su Luo's slightly swollen red lips while his eyes conveyed a devilishly enchanting smile. When Luo was promoted to Grandmaster level apothecary, his benefits would also be upgraded. How awesome was that? I'm looking forward to it, he replied. Su Luo looked over Nangong Luoyun's shoulder and found that the two armies of magical beasts were already battling it out to an extent where it was hard to tell the two sides apart. Nangong Luoyun held Su Luo in his arms and asked her in a good mood, "Which team do you support?" This gave Su Luo a kind of feeling that was as if she were being asked which nation's team she supported in the World Cup. One team was the blazing magical beasts, and the other was the dark magical beasts. I support the blazing magical beasts. Su Luo thought she had a fire attribute, so she chose the blazing magical beasts, which were the fire attribute. Very good. Nangong Luoyun silently took away Su Luo's identity plate. Su Luo did not notice this detail and just looked at Nangong Luoyun worriedly. They are killing each other. Will they completely wipe themselves out? By then, none of them will be left for us. Su Luo was still preparing to earn a large amount of points, so she got depressed upon seeing how the armies of magical beasts were killing each other. These were all points she could have earned. Wait for me. Nangong Luoyun's beautiful eyes flashed with a glint of light. Then he patted Su Luo's head, turned around, and left. Su Luo watched as Nangong Luoyun rushed into the magical beast zone where the two armies were killing each other. At first, Su Luo's heart tightened with concern. However, after she saw Nangong Luoyun figure enter the huge magical beast area with lightning speed like nobody was there, she felt somewhat relieved. Once Nangong Luoyun entered the dense army of magic beasts, Su Luo could no longer see him and did not know what he was doing. It was unknown as to whether he was dead or alive. Su Luo was worried about his health and began to get anxious in her heart. Oh yeah, the communication amulet. Su Luo remembered that Nangong Luoyun's name was in the black communication amulet. If he was still alive, it would undoubtedly indicate that. Su Luo hurriedly took out the black communication amulet and relaxed a little when she saw on it the green symbol that represented his life. It didn't take long for Su Luo to finish waiting for Nangong Luoyun's return. As soon as Su Luo saw him, she rushed to his side and looked at him carefully. Why did you go inside? Do you know how dangerous it is? Although you are very strong, 2 fists cannot beat 4 legs. Even a huge army of magical beasts can drown you if you receive a mouthful of spittle from each of them. Nangong Luoyun greatly enjoyed being the object of Su Luo's concerns. He pretended to haughtily straighten his back, raise his chin, and slant his eyes before handing Su Luo an object. Chapter 2410. Surprise 2. Our team sadly announces that starting from next week, the release rate for DKC will be changed from 3 to 2 per week due to limited staff and funds. Thanks to those who continuously support us. It was Su Luo's identity plate, which was also her diamond token. When did you take my diamond token? Su Luo gave Nangong Luoyun a suspicious glance, unsure of what on earth he was up to. See for yourself. Nangong Luoyun felt quite proud of himself. Su Luo looked at him bewilderedly and slowly took her identity plate back. Just when Su Luo held it in her hands, she immediately heard a series of familiar ding-dong sounds. It would have been trivial if it only rang once or twice. But the problem was that those sounds were shockingly ringing out one after another and continued without end. Su Luo's entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and she stood there like a wooden stake, completely forgetting how to react, because this matter was way too heaven-defying. Those ding-dong sounds brought with them many points for Su Luo, from several hundred to even several thousand. Although the individual amounts weren't large, this rate was just way too absurdly fast. In the blink of an eye, Su Luo noticed her diamond plate's points had risen by 2 million points. Su Luo. Nangong Luoyun stood straight and proud, his face taut. Looking carefully, one could see a look in his eyes that seemed to be begging for praise. Su Luo was beyond excited. This time, she quickly came back to her senses. Without thinking any further, Su Luo jumped and lunged over in a single step, wrapping her slender arms around Nangong Liu Yun's neck. Tell me quickly, what exactly is going on here? Su Luo was so elated her face was flushed and her voice was trembling. Nangong Luyun wrapped his arms around Su Luo and asked calmly, Happy now? Of course. I'm overjoyed. Nangong Luyun, you're the best. Su Luo, who had made a great fortune, praised him generously. Nangong Luyun continued, I worked this hard just in exchange for your few words of praise. Su Luo moved close to him and gave him a big kiss. Nangong Luyun wasn't satisfied and pointed to his lips. Su Luo angrily glared at him. His lips had basically been nibbled to pieces, yet he still wanted some more? How greedy! Su Luo didn't follow the script and hung at Nangong Liuyun's neck for a full minute before letting him go. A red kiss mark appeared on Nangong Liuyun's fair skin. Su Luo patted Nangong Liuyun's head in satisfaction. You have been stamped. Remember, you're already my person. Now, I will ask you a question, and you answer it, okay, one? Although Nangong Luyun didn't understand the last word, he could somewhat understand by guessing. Thus, he nodded his head. Ask away. What is this current situation? How in the world did you do it? Su Luo pointed at her identity plate and stared at Nangong Luyun in disbelief. It made no sense. She didn't participate in the battle, yet the points were still gushing in. This was more shocking than having money drop from the sky. Okay? The circumstances are more complicated than you think. Nangong Liyun poked Su Luo's forehead. You only need to accept the points. Why do you need to bother about it so much? Do you mean that I'm actually considered as part of the Magical Flame Beast mercenary group? So the points they gained when they killed the dark magical beasts were given to me? Su Luo gave a bold guess. Indeed. Basically, that is what happened. How on earth did you achieve that? How amazing! Su Luo looked adoringly at Nangong Luyun. If he could accomplish even this, was there anything he couldn't accomplish? Could her Nangong truly be omnipotent? Well, each group has its own leader. Nangong Luyun looked at Su Luo and slowly began to narrate the scene. Aha! Su Luo blinked her big eyes, fully engrossed in listening. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.